What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. Today, we have the Fantasy Football Awards show for the 2023 season. The season has come to an end, at least for most of us. I know there's probably another week or two for some of you guys still playing for a championship, but it is time for the awards ceremony. It is time to honor the players who had breakout seasons, MVP seasons, all of that good stuff for your fantasy football teams. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into this video and let's talk about the award winners. But first, let's bring in my co-host MFGDs. War, how you doing, man?
Hey man, I'm all good. We all good over here, man. How's it going?
Good, man. It's time for the fantasy football award ceremony. It feels like the season has come and gone so quickly. We're at that time now. Hopefully, you got some teams still playing. Hopefully, you got some of these guys on some teams. If not, maybe next year.
I got one little team hanging on by a thread. That's about it.
Well, let's get into the award ceremony. We have 9 awards to give away today, but let's start off with our positional awards. Each of these players has been one of the best players at their position. Each of these players has been voted on by people in our Discord community. We have a free Discord community. It's linked in the description. Our community voted on some of these award winners. So with that being said, we are looking at the quarterback of the year as our first award. The nominees at this position are Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Lamar Jackson. And so without further ado, the winner of the quarterback of the year, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott wins the award. Josh Allen is the runner-up to this award here. And when we look at what Dak Prescott has done at the quarterback position here this year, so far through 13 games, he has 278.8 fantasy points, 21.4 fantasy points per game, and he has thrown for 3,500 yards. It's one of the highest passing yard totals for anybody in football so far this year. But I'm curious how you feel about this award, War, because this personally is not the guy I would have voted for as the award winner, but he won by a hefty landslide in the voting. So curious on your thoughts here about Dak Prescott. I think definitely deserving of being a nominee. I don't know if I would have had him be the award winner.
First of all, I think it's been a down quarterback year across the board. We don't have, the guys that are just leaps and bounds against the other. I think another reason a lot of people pick Dak by a landslide is because Dak was a lot of people's quarterback too coming into the season. So you're usually taking Dak after you already had in Superflex League, if you already had, a better quarterback taken. So Dak is pretty much a league winner this year because you're getting that top tier production out of your Superflex position. And I think that's why a lot of people have fallen victim to teams with Dak on. They've played teams that probably had a combination of Lamar and Dak or like something like that, to where, yes, and people know that for the most part, Dak is outperforming a lot of guys. So you're getting all that extra production, and that's how I'm trying to justify the landslide. Do I think Dak should have won it? No, I think people are just being prisoners of the moment. I probably would have gave it to Josh Allen. And that's just where I am with that.
Yeah, I think that's who I would have voted as well as Josh Allen. Josh Allen currently QB1 in total fantasy points scored at the quarterback position this year. Like you said, kind of prisoner of the moment thing, but also, narrative. I think the narrative right now for Josh Allen is the popular media talking point of, oh, he throws a lot of interceptions. And for some reason, that makes people think that he should be talked about or viewed negatively. I don't really understand the whole conversation. That's probably a debate for another day. But since the bye week, or really since just before the bye week, since week 6, Dak Prescott has had 6 top 3 finishes at the quarterback position. So I think a lot of people love what Dak Prescott has done for them down the stretch in this fantasy football season. And really, he has been a guy who has helped will you all the way to the playoffs and hopefully will be willing you to a championship trophy if he is on your rosters.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all right, man, we have the second award here to give away, and this is going to be the Tight End of the Year award. So the best tight end for fantasy football. And the nominees for this award are going to be Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, and George Kittle. So without further ado, the winner of the Tight End of the Year award goes to TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings currently sits as the tight end 1 in fantasy football. Through 14 games, he's averaging almost 15 fantasy points per game, 210 total fantasy points. He has more receiving yards than any tight end in football. He has 123 targets, 91 receptions. He has been having a great year despite most of this second half of the season not having his starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins. It's crazy to think what he could have done if Kirk was playing the entire year. But so far, TJ Hawkinson, tight end 1 on the year, and the People's Choice for tight end of the year award. What do you think about TJ Hawkinson more?
I 100% agree with this selection. I've had TJ Hawkinson on a few teams this season. TJ Hawkinson is not only a stud, but he was a stud after the injury of Kirk Cousins. Wish I would have known that in some cases, but I have no pushback on this pick at all. I think this is the right choice, and somehow this is the season Hawkinson was able to take Travis Kelce's stranglehold off of this award. Even though this is an inaugural award, we could assume that Travis would have won it the last I don't know how many years.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because TJ is scoring so much despite only having 5 touchdowns on the season. But really, to this point, it has been because of the target volume and the reception numbers that TJ Hawkinson has been such a benefit to your fantasy football teams. But you bring up Travis Kelce. We talk about Travis Kelce. Keep in mind, Kelce's played 2 less games than TJ Hawkinson. He's only about 10 points behind in scoring. I think from a points per game basis, there's nobody better than Travis Kelce so far in fantasy football this year at the tight end position. So you said the inaugural award to Travis Kelce. I think if Kelce didn't miss 2 games at the beginning of the year, we probably would be talking about Travis Kelce. But with that, where it is, Hawkinson, he's been healthy. The quarterback hasn't been healthy. He's still balled out. He has been very, very good for your fantasy football teams and has probably seen a pretty decent spike in dynasty value this year. Do you think TJ Hawkinson has surpassed Mark Andrews now as a dynasty asset?
I think he has. I think if I had to pick between the two, that I would be picking TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah,
man,
I agree.
That's just where I am with that, man.
Fair enough. All right, man. Well, let's get to our next award. We're going to move over to the running back position. The nominees for this award are going to be Christian McCaffrey, Raheem Mostert, Travis Etienne, and Alvin Kamara. And the winner of this award is going to be Christian McCaffrey. Was that a surprise to you at all, War? Because Christian McCaffrey, he received unanimous votes for running back of the year here in this one, and what he has done so far this year has been ridiculous. Raheem Mostert, he's running back 2 on the season. He has 237 total points at the running back position. Christian McCaffrey, the running back 1, he has 311 points. It is an 80-point gap between the running back 1 and the running back 2 this year, averaging 24 fantasy points per game. That is more points per game than pretty much everybody in football, not named Tyreek Hill and Josh Allen. Those are the only 2 guys averaging more points per game than Christian McCaffrey up to this point. He's been balling out, 1,200 yards up to this point in the season, and multiple touchdowns, like 17 touchdowns already on the year. That's all only through the first 13 games. Christian McCaffrey's been balling out, man. Do you agree with the unanimous vote here?
Yeah, like I mean, it's almost like asking if Michael Jordan was the greatest player of all time basketball. It's just an easy answer, and the answer is yes. I was so it's crazy. You were going off the nominees. I was more surprised thinking about, man, it's really amazing that Alvin Kamara went from a guy that nobody wanted this offseason to making it to one of his nominees. That's the surprise. That's the actual surprise. But McCaffrey with it, that ain't no surprise, man. Christian McCaffrey is that dude. I think without him, the 49ers would not be what they are. And I think his 80-point gap between himself and Raheem Mostert it speaks for itself. We might be talking about the overall best player in fantasy football, hands down.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, if you are into some of the analytical data and some of the things like wins above replacement, it's a statistic that shows you how valuable players are to your team compared to other options or replacement options at the same position. Christian McCaffrey is like the highest WAR score that you can have on all of these things. He is just so valuable to your fantasy football teams. Nobody scores more points than Christian McCaffrey to your fantasy football teams. And yeah, man, it's crazy. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season, we would be talking about running back of the year, like the best running back of the year award, and you would have the nominees, like you said, Alvin Kamara, Raheem Mostert, some of these guys here, even Travis Etienne.
No
I think
Austin
people,
Eckler, like the usual suspects are not there. Eckler, Saquon.
everyone was very high on Bijan. He wasn't even included in this, like
Oh,
things like that. But it's been a crazy year for the running back position. But one thing has stayed consistent, and that consistency has been Christian McCaffrey is damn good at football.
death, taxes, and Christian McCaffrey.
Yep. And we'll see how long this lasts, man. I mean, I'm interested to see because Christian McCaffrey is, we talk about that running back age cliff in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Christian McCaffrey will be 28 years old next year, which is about when that cliff shows up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with CMC. But after a year like this, it's really hard to, say you're not going to draft him because of an age cliff. I'm curious, one Dynasty follow-up question with you here, War, is how far down the Dynasty running back rankings do you put CMC? Like, does he still have to be a top 3 Dynasty running back asset despite the age, or do you have him a little bit lower than top 3?
You gotta have him. You gotta have him. This might sound crazy. The top running back in Dynasty is probably still Bijan, right? I really do truly believe Christian McCaffrey could lose a step next season and still be better than Bijan.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
a
still
chance.
taking him. I'm still taking him high. His style of play, think of it like this. Him taking a step back is still him getting mad PPR and still getting like he's a multi-dimensional scorer. Like, yeah, he might fall back on the actual like rushing abilities, but he's still gonna be catching like those short yardage passes and he's still gonna be getting it like that. So I think you still have to get Christian McCaffrey where you can get him. He's still worth being the dynasty running back one.
Yeah, and has a very significant goal line role as well, too. So it'll be interesting. The only other 2 names that I thought of when I was like, okay, where do we rank Christian McCaffrey is I probably am going to take Bijan over him due to the age and the potential that we have seen out of him and still believe he has, despite the Arthur Smith stuff. And then I think Jahmyr Gibbs deserves to really be up there at this point. We've seen him do enough as a rookie that he probably deserves to be up there. But outside of those 2, like it probably is just Chris McCaffrey at age 28, and who cares? Like, just ride Christian McCaffrey's hot hand until it's done, man. But
yeah, man, I can't disagree with you.
All right, man. Well, let's go over to the wide receiver position. The nominees for this award for wide receiver of the year are going to be Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, and AJ Brown. And the winner of this award is going to be Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill, yep.
A surprise at all? Probably not. Tyreek Hill currently is the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football, is chasing 2,000 yards as we speak, trying to get that record, trying to break that threshold. He also has 12 touchdowns on the season. I was talking about the guys who averaged that many fantasy points. It was Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, and Christian McCaffrey. Tyreek's averaging 24.8 fantasy points per game, but I will say he did not receive unanimous votes the same way that Christian McCaffrey did. The runner-up to this position was CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb did receive a few votes. So curious on your thoughts here about the award win for Tyreek Hill.
I mean, we could talk. Tyreek Hill's in an MVP conversation, in my opinion, because I think it's clear that that team is close to nothing when he doesn't play or when he's not out there. Him chasing 2,000 yards, that has come at the expense of Jalen Waddle. I don't know if they spoke before the season, say, hey, man, I'm going for it this year. If I was Waddle, I would be like, I ain't having no down year for you, but that's what look like it's happening, because instead of it being a 1A, 1B situation, it's definitely a A-B situation. I don't even think we need to talk about whether or not Tyreek deserved to win this award. It was the easiest decision as Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the games where I played against Tyreek this season, it was like, okay, it was just legitimate fantasy football fear. I felt like that about 3 players this season. 3 players made me fear when I had to play them in the lineup. And the funny thing is, 3 of them are award winners in this show so far. I came to fear Dak after I traded him. I came to fear Dak because it started to be an every week thing. I feared Christian McCaffrey like I do every season. season, and I fear Tyreek Hill. And I think those are the only three guys I could say struck fear in my heart as far as like games I had to play them. Yeah, Tyreek, this is an easy choice to me. It's not even close.
Yeah, I agree. And there's very few players, like you said, in fantasy football that when you go up against them, you're just like, if they can just have 20 today, I'm okay with that. And Tyreek Hill's one of those guys where it's like, okay, he only scored 20 today. Like, I should be okay to match that with somebody. It's probably going to be my best wide receiver on my team that has to score 20, but I can at least match Tyreek Hill.
It's just like you go into the game and be like, okay, he might score 40 points. I need everybody else to play bad. Like, that's what I used to say when I play guys like that. Like, I need everybody else to play bad.
Exactly. And so that's like it. He's just one of those fantasy football game breakers, like we said, along with CMC, to where you're just praying that they have a good day instead of these great days that we're accustomed to with these types of players. Yeah. So with that being said, man, let's move on over to the next award. And this is now where we are going to get out of those position awards. We're going to get into the actual creative awards, a little bit different awards, probably some of the fun awards for most of these viewers. But the first award we got to talk about is going to be one that probably isn't a good award. This isn't an award you want to put on your shelf at home, but this is going to be fantasy football's biggest bust of 2023. The nominees for this award are going to be Austin Eckler, Patrick Mahomes, Devontae Adams, and Jalen Waddle, and Kyle Pitts. Those are the nominees, 5 nominees for this award. And with that being said, the winner of this award, biggest bust of 2023, Patrick Mahomes. Wow, man, how the mighty have fallen. Was a quarterback that was being drafted as the QB1, and a lot of people who play in one quarterback leagues where they say wait on quarterback, people were saying, well, that doesn't apply to Patrick Mahomes. This is a guy who is a game changer, a game breaker, one of those guys we've talked about. We've viewed him as the Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey level of game breaker. And so far this year, Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 9 on the year, so a low end quarterback 1. You might say that's not too bad, but when you see the expectation that Mahomes had coming into the year, it's a little disappointing. And also when you consider that Patrick Mahomes is averaging just 0.3 more fantasy points per game than Jordan Love this season, that is the type of year that Patrick Mahomes has had. 246 points on the season, 23 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions for 3,398 passing yards. War, how do you feel about the 19 point per game Patrick Mahomes?
I think the answer is wrong. Like, okay, you got to look at it to a context like this. Okay, Patrick Mahomes is having a down year. His down year is still better than a lot of players. Still a quarterback 1. I don't understand the logic behind. Let's look at these guys. We're talking about the word bust here, right? That means that there's no quantifiable reason to why they fell off. Kyle Pitts, his quarterback is Desmond Ridder. Jalen Waddle, we just talked about, was feeling his down year. Who else we have on there?
Adams.
Devontae Adams, we kind of know why he's having a down year. Quarterback position, fired coach.
Austin Eckler. Now Austin Eckler, he was
bust of the year. It's Austin Eckler.
He was the runner up to this award, the second most votes, but it seems like more people feel burnt by Patrick Mahomes this year than Austin Eckler. I know Austin Eckler, he missed some time at the beginning of the year due to injury. That was unfortunate to some people who drafted him, but even then it wasn't like a crazy amount of time. It was like 3 weeks. I feel like that's pretty normal for your running back to miss at least 3 games during a season. Like we said, man, once he came in and started playing, Austin Eckler was not good for your fantasy football teams. I mean, he pissed off a lot of fantasy football managers in the fantasy playoffs here on Thursday night, where he scored you like 8 or 9 points, something like that in your fantasy playoffs. And a lot of that not necessarily his fault. I mean, the Chargers got blown out the building, but it hasn't looked like the same Austin Eckler. He hasn't looked as good. But I think with Patrick Mahomes, man, you've said it before. You said you think he's kind of missing Eric Bieniemy. You think that's kind of part of playing into the down year. I think additionally too, like, he really does need some wide receiver help. Sky Moore, that project hasn't really panned out. The Kadarius Toney project hasn't panned out. Rashee Rice is looking okay, but I think Rashee Rice is more of a complimentary wide receiver, maybe your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 on your roster, than he is an actual centerpiece. And 2, Travis Kelce is not the youngest ever. They're going to have to kind of look at life post Kelce here eventually. It may not be next year, but it's coming down the road. They need to find this out out and figure this out from a franchise perspective, and definitely people who have Patrick Mahomes on your dynasty teams, are you worried that this is the new norm, or do you think just off year, forget about it, he'll be back where he's at next year?
I think it's an off year. Forget about it. He'll be back next year. I think if I was an Austin Eckler guy, I would be much more concerned about that. He's a running back. He's an older running back. Okay, so I just want to briefly touch. I know this is about Mahomes. My answer for Mahomes is that he shouldn't have been the biggest bust of the year, and that he'll be back to who he was in short order as soon as they get that wide receiver position taken care of. Austin Eckler, I was thinking about what you just said about the game where they got blown out of the building. Okay, first of all, we looked at Austin Eckler as like almost like close to a 1B to Christian McCaffrey. So that's a big fall off to where he is now. That's the first thing. The second thing is Austin Eckler in the past, in the game where they've getting blown out the building, he still would have put up monster numbers because he's a part of the passing game. So for him to not be active in the passing game on top of his already starting to wane rushing yard totals, it's just not good. He was a bust this year, and I'll be quite honest, I'll probably not draft him again. If I take part in the redraft, I'm not drafting him again, and if I'm in Dynasty, I'm moving him, but you probably should have moved him before the trade deadline this season, because that's probably your last chance to get something good for him.
Yeah, I mean, they say, when you have that aging running back, it's better to move them a year early and miss out on that last year of high-end production than it is a year late, because the value difference is crazy. And I think the value difference from what you could have got for Austin Eckler last season compared to what you're going to get this season, it's probably going to be significant. But I kind of agree with you, man. I mean, I think, both those guys we're talking about, Mahomes and Eckler, they're probably 1 and 2 for who should be biggest bust. The other guys, you can kind of make the excuse for what happened. But I think Austin Eckler, really the only one you can make the excuse for up to this point is he just lost it. I think that's really the only excuse you can make. So it is what it is. But let's move on to our next award. We have a few more awards here that we need to wrap up. The next award here on our docket is going to be the Waiver Wire Wonder, the best waiver edition of the year. And the nominees for this award are going to be Sam Howell, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Jerome Ford, and Zach Moss. And the winner of this award is going to be Puka Nacua. That was probably not a surprise either. Best waiver wire ad of the year. The runner-up to this award was Kyron Williams. He was the second highest voted player in that. But Puka Nacua, the rookie that most people didn't know about, didn't care about coming into the season, after week 1, going into your waiver wire, he was the number 1 ad for most people based off of what he did with Cooper Kupp not in the lineup. And he is currently the wide receiver 11 overall in fantasy football. He has 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns, 127 targets, and he's averaging 17 fantasy points per game. That's better than guys like Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson. I mean, all these stud fantasy players that we were hyped about all offseason. Puka Nacua has outscored them. What are your thoughts on Puka Nacua as the waiver wire wonder?
I think that's the right choice. I did think Kyron, but the minute that you said Puka Nacua, I was like, okay, yeah, that award is his. Puka Nacua is another guy. If you just happen to, which I really don't see a scenario where you drafted him. Like if you drafted him this year, you probably picked him up on the waiver, which is why he's winning this award. He's another guy who could probably win you the league because you didn't really spend any draft capital on him. Yep. So I mean, this is the right choice, man. I mean, it's not really a big debate. Kyron should be number 2. He's another guy you just didn't see him coming. Both of them are on the same team. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's a team that had some injuries this year, a team that had some unforeseen things like the Cam Akers cut and some of the other stuff that happened midseason. And yeah, look, it's just Puka Nacua at this point, man. He's been a baller. He's been balling out all year. He's a low-end wide receiver 1 that you picked up for a few dollars fab off the waiver wire at the beginning of the year. And I think what makes it even sweeter is you picked him up after week 1, so he pretty much has played with you the entire season. It's not like a guy that you added and only got like 3 or 4 weeks out of. No, you've got like every game this year out of Puka Nacua. So very, very worthy of this award. He would have been my choice of the award. And I'm interested, War, where you think Puka Nacua should be valued in Dynasty Fantasy Football at this point. Is he a guy that we should be viewing as a top 10, top 15 Dynasty wide receiver?
I think the safe thing to do would be like think of him more in that 15-20 range because we don't know what the situation is going to be going forward with that team. So I mean, look, there's been plenty of guys who've had the Puka Nakua season only to disappear next season. Miles Austin, everyone. And I think that you just have to be careful of that. Like, so I mean, that's where I'm at with that. And if you guys want to know what I mean, go look up Miles Austin, because he did this exact same thing before, and then he disappeared from the face of the earth after having a Puka Nakua season. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely hear the debate. I hear a lot of people that are very high on him, and I think rightfully so. You know, it's not often you get guys who come in and do this. And I think if you were, I like to compare Puka. He's a little bit less hyped as a prospect than what Amon-Ra St. Brown was when Amon-Ra St. Brown was coming into the league. But Amon-Ra wasn't a highly drafted wide receiver, but he kind of fell into a role kind of where he was a hyper targeted guy. And I think if you bet on Amon-Ra after his rookie year, you probably are very happy with what you've had, because at this point, I think we would all consider Amon-Ra a top 5 dynasty asset at the wide receiver position. But I think you could make a similar bet with Puka Nakua. But like you said, there's a little bit more uncertainty with that. You know, who's going to be the quarterback long term? I can't imagine Matthew Stafford's going to be there forever. And then what does the rest of that offense continue to look like, you know, moving forward as well? I personally do think that Puka Nakua should be considered top 15.
Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's safe to consider him the 15 to 20 range, but if you have him top 15, that's not a problem either. It's just more of how much risk you're willing to put into it.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, let's go on to the next award. This award is going to be for fantasy football's Breakout Player of the Year. This was the messiest voting as far as how it was dispersed across the board. This guy who won the award only won by a single vote. He just had a 1-vote lead, but the nominees for this award are going to be Brock Purdy, Rachaad White, DJ Moore, Nico Collins, and Jordan Love. The winner of this award by a slim margin is going to be Rachaad White. And Rachaad White, man, he is currently sitting as the running back 5 for fantasy football right now. He has 204 fantasy points, averaging 15.7 fantasy points per game. He has been a true game changer at the running back position, a guy that you can plug and play every week and get running back 1 numbers. And you drafted him very, very late. You probably drafted him as your RB3, RB4 on your teams this year, and he's now turned into an RB1. So how do you feel about Rachaad White, and how do you feel about some of the nominees that he was up against?
I would have given it to Brock Purdy. I'll say that. Rachaad White, honestly, I'll be completely honest. I have Rachaad White on one of my teams, and I swear I had no clue he was running back 5 because I didn't feel like, but then again, I don't think running backs are necessarily going off this season. Like, Raheem Mostert is the running back too. Like, so I mean, we're not having like those dominant running back performances. So I also have to keep that in mind. That said, if you have him as a dynasty asset, this is very good news. Him being a running back 5, that bodes very well for your dynasty team. I just would have given it to Brock Purdy because I feel like while they both were considered, like for instance, DJ Moore, I don't really consider it a breakout because he's been productive in this league before.
Yeah.
Who else do you have on there? Brock
Jordan
Purdy,
Love.
Rachaad White, Jordan Love. I'm just not giving it to him.
The other Nico Collins.
Nico Collins is another one. He was another one that kind of caught people by surprise. I think your top 2 though are for sure Brock Purdy and Rachaad White. I think those are the 2 guys you will have to go for. Would those be your top 2?
I think my top 2 would be Rachaad White and Nico Collins. Those would probably be my top 2. I definitely hear the Brock Purdy, and I think Brock Purdy's deserving. The runner-up was actually DJ Moore. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I know that DJ Moore's had a really good year. But my argument is the same argument as you wore, where it's like he's been good before. It's just he's having his best season yet. But he has been good before, and quite honestly, like he's had multiple wide receiver 2 seasons or better. So it's like he did improve from a wide receiver 2 to a wide receiver 1. Yes, that's true, but I don't know that if that's a breakout. I mean, where Brock Purdy was last year to where he is now, like Brock Purdy wasn't even on fantasy teams last year, and now he's a quarterback 1. And I see you over there smirking. And then
I'm smirking, don't you?
I know. And then Nico Collins, he was a guy that like people were throwing on the end of the bench and hoping hoping that they could get like streamable weeks out of him last week and then or last year, and that never happened. And now he's a guy who is like the wide receiver 11, wide receiver 12 overall in fantasy football. Like these are guys who did truly break out. I think Rachaad White would be my winner, but Nico Collins is probably the runner-up for me.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Like those, Nico Collins would also be in my consideration as well.
Yeah. Say what you want to say, man.
Andrew has been saying all season that DJ Moore is not a wide receiver one. But here he is right now today admitting that DJ Moore has graduated to being a wide receiver one.
Look,
finally.
Really, part of me saying that, because I only remember one instance of me saying that he wasn't a wide receiver one. It was after you traded him. That is really the only one instance that I remember saying that. And I think I was just saying that because I didn't want that trade to go through. And so I just was trying to talk shit about him. And so, yeah, I mean, look, man, it's all in the art of the deal, right? It is what it is.
It is.
No, I mean, DJ Moore's been great. And, I've been a DJ Moore fan for many, many, many years, even when people were like, bro, DJ Moore's trash, bro. Like at this point, he is what he is.
I was a DJ Moore hater, so
yeah. So no, DJ Moore, I mean, he's graduated. He's a wide receiver one up to this point, and it's really come from the volume. It didn't look great when Justin Fields wasn't throwing the ball, but now that Justin Fields has been back, he's kind of looked a lot better. So I think he's a strong play for pretty much the rest of the season in your fantasy playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I think the situation with DJ Moore is actually something very good for DJ Moore, because the Bears are what?
So we can debate that.
Okay. I think we'll debate that another day, but I think that DJ Moore is either going to remain with Justin Fields, which is going to be good because we've seen what he can be with Justin Fields, and that's wide receiver one, or
Harrison Jr.
I think they can draft Caleb Williams, and that will be an improvement for DJ Moore from what Justin Fields has been. And I think that will be better for his dynasty value, because I think he'll be getting a better quarterback throwing him the football, a more accurate quarterback throwing him the football. And I think with a change of Caleb Williams instead of Justin Fields will hopefully come with a more offensive-minded head coach. Hopefully, you guys go and chase Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions. That would be ideal, I think, for your head coaching candidate.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But anyways, that's what I think. We'll see what happens. I know you're kind of anti Caleb at this point, which is interesting because I feel like earlier last offseason it was like everybody was hella excited about Caleb, and now people have kind of cooled off. I don't fully understand it. I know he had a down year, but we'll see what happens.
It could be fatigue, just like when the same guy keeps winning MVP, you just get tired of him. It could just be fatigue of hearing about Caleb.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we're seeing with Josh Allen right now. I mean, everybody wants to bring up, find the one negative stat about Josh Allen, or find the one, whatever talking point that says, well, maybe he isn't as good as we think because he's been so damn good. Like, I think that's kind of what it is with Caleb Williams. But let's get to the next award. We have two more awards, pretty short on time here, so we'll keep it a little bit short and sweet. But this award is going to be for fantasy football's Rookie of the Year. The nominees are CJ Stroud, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua, and Sam Laporta. Now, the winner of this award is going to be CJ Stroud, Rookie of the Year. Runner-up for the award is actually Puka Nacua here. Waiver wire wonder, runner-up for Rookie of the Year. What a year for Puka Nacua. But CJ Stroud is the award winner. When you look at what CJ Stroud has put together as a rookie this season, keep in mind he was a lot of people's, he's the last quarterback on my draft board that I'll consider taking. He's the last guy that if he falls to me, or when he falls to me, because people are going to take A-Rich and Bryce ahead of him, that's just the guy that I'm going to get at the end of the first round. And now, CJ Stroud, overall, the quarterback 8 on the season. He has 3,600 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. That's less than every single fantasy football quarterback in the top 22. That's less than everybody in the top 22. So he's not even turning the football over. He has 20 passing touchdowns, and he has 3 of them on the ground as well, averaging 19 fantasy points per game at the quarterback position. That's very, very good numbers from rookie CJ Stroud. How do you feel about CJ Stroud as the Rookie of the Year?
I think this is a pretty easy decision to keep this short, but what I do want to say is that was a hell of a list of nominees, man. And like, if CJ wasn't doing it the way he was doing it and as unexpectedly as he was doing it, this would have been like a really tough decision because a lot of those guys came out and represented this year.
Yeah, man. This is who I would be voting as the Rookie of the Year, but you could make a case for all of these guys. Like you said, the nominees is incredible. It's a great rookie year. If you had some first round rookie picks, you probably hit on a good guy for your team. Even if you had some later ones. I mean, Sam Laporta wasn't drafted early by any means. Puka Nacua wasn't drafted early. If you had some later ones, you probably hit on some good talent. I mean, there's guys on this list that we probably didn't even nominate that still had good years. The Tank Dells of the world. Like some of those guys that it's like they were just extra pieces that had really good rookie years. I think Sam Laporta, especially after what we saw last night. Now, keep in mind the voting was done before the Detroit Lions played the Denver Broncos on Saturday Night Football. It's weird to say Saturday Night Football, but before they played them, and Sam Laporta had 3 touchdowns in the first round of your fantasy playoffs, because I think that would have swayed the voting a little bit, knowing that you just got 3 touchdowns in your fantasy playoffs. But Sam Laporta, hell of a player. Gibbs, Bijan, all these guys. But at the end of the day, I think CJ Stroud very deserving of what this is, and he's probably going to win the Rookie of the Year award in the NFL as well.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
All right, man. So the final award for our award show here today is going to be the most prestigious of the awards. It is the Fantasy Football MVP, the most valuable player for the 2023 season. The nominees of this award are Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Josh Allen. The winner of this award for the 2023 most valuable player, voted by our Discord and by us, War, is Christian McCaffrey for the San Francisco 49ers, the most valuable player. Runner-up was Tyreek Hill. Those were the only 2 guys that received votes. There were 0 votes for Josh Allen. There were 0 votes for Travis Kelce. But Christian McCaffrey, the winner of the Fantasy Football MVP. We've talked about it, averaging 24 points per game. The gap between 1 and 2 is so significant. It's a country mile, man. At this point, Christian McCaffrey, MVP, man. What do you think?
I mean, earlier when I said he's probably the MVP of the league, like I have forgotten all the results of this award ceremony. And this goes to show right here how amazing Christian McCaffrey is. I think it was the right choice. As you were going through the names, Tyreek was literally the only one who I was just like, but Kelce and Josh Allen, as great as they are, as magnificent as they are, I only thought about the first 2, and the gap between Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek is huge. So that's just where I am with that. I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, man. Christian McCaffrey, if you drafted him, you probably got a decent value on him. It wasn't crazy. I mean, people still thought Christian McCaffrey was going to be good. I don't think they thought he was going to be this good. I think it was just that year where it's like everybody was kind of fading running back. People were getting Christian McCaffrey like mid to late first round, and then they were getting the best player in fantasy football. So like,
I think people are also, I think a lot of people are also afraid of those last 2 years in Carolina where he was hurt. They're afraid of those years coming back. And because we play in a league with a guy who doesn't care about those years, and somehow every year he's Christian McCaffrey. So not letting it happen anymore.
Exactly. And when you look at what he did this year, I mean, we didn't even talk about it when we first talked about him as running back of the year, because I kind of wanted to save this point. Every single week that you played Christian McCaffrey, except for 1 week, every week he was a running back 1 on the week for your fantasy football teams. The only week that he wasn't, he finishes the running back 14, so he was 2 spots away from being a running back 1. He's had 20-point weeks, 30-point weeks, 40-point weeks this year just as Christian McCaffrey. I mean, this guy's been a game breaker for you. Chances are, if you have Christian McCaffrey on a team, if you've been playing with Christian McCaffrey on one of these fantasy teams, you're probably a playoff team. You're probably a team that can compete for a championship this year. And Christian McCaffrey is our Let's Talk Dynasty League FFB most valuable player for the 2023 season. But
I agree, man. It's not too much to say about it.
All right, man. Well, with that being said, that was our 2023 award show. That is going to conclude all of the content for the current 2023 season. That does not mean the show is stopping. We are continuing through the offseason. This is Let's Talk Dynasty, baby. It's 24/7, 365 around here. So if you guys want to catch the new content, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you like this video. It is the best free way to show our channel some support. It lets us know that you guys enjoy our podcast here over the League FFB. And last but not least, make sure that you guys are a member of our Discord. I know that is not going to be fantasy football season for your redraft leagues, but this is full swing for Dynasty. So make sure you hop in that Discord. If you have any questions all off season long, go into that Discord. That's where we're going to talk fantasy football. But War, anything else before we hop out of here?
No, sir. Let's get ready to watch some football as we continue our grind towards the NFL playoffs.
Let's get it, man.
Have a good fantasy playoffs, y'all.
Yes, sir. Good luck in your matchups. Just a few weeks left. Hopefully you guys are holding up some trophies at the end of this. But with that being said, guys, we will see you on our next episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. But until then, peace out.